Welcome to the show, everybody. Michael with CoronavirusDiaries, and today I got a special guest, Ti Akiel, a local community leader, artist, and entrepreneur. Ti, thanks for coming on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me as always.
Yeah, so for any viewers, listeners that are unfamiliar, all of Ti's information will be in the About section below. A little bit of background. Ti and myself met a number of years ago, and since then I've worked on a number of projects, collaborations together, become friends over the years. I had an interesting conversation recently in the safety of our own house, and it led me to ask him to actually come out and share some thoughts and insights, and it was a good discussion. But without going into too much detail, Ti, how about you give the viewers, listeners a little bit of insight into who you are and what you do?
For sure, yeah. So I'm 25, born in Milwaukee, raised in Minneapolis. I consider Minneapolis to be my home, north side to be specific. And yeah, I like to make music. That's kind of a passion of mine. Staying in the community is also a passion, just trying to be there for people that are like me, people are in the same positions that I was in, because I know how important like resources are. So yeah, that's kind of the new gear right now. I don't consider myself to be an activist or whatever. The official titles are I'm just a guy from the hood that's trying to give back a little bit. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, a little bit about me.
Respect. So just going to dive right in. First and foremost, Juneteenth. You do anything to celebrate Juneteenth?
Actually, I'm going to an art show. One of my homies is in like a showcasing of like Black artists, and it's a Juneteenth celebration. But outside of that, I'm not. It's kind of weird for me right now seeing like everybody jump into the whole Juneteenth thing because I've known about Juneteenth my whole life. Same as like a lot of other Black people, and we never really celebrated it like that. Like it was like it's Juneteenth, but like it was never. There used to be events I remember back when I was younger, but it used to be a lot of violence that would pop off, so those kind of got shut down over the years. But yeah, it never was something that like we didn't have like a official celebration. It was always just more so like hey, happy Juneteenth type of thing. I'm not mad at it though, but I just had things going on, so I'm gonna hit that little event and
Yeah,
got some other stuff going too.
I think I'd seen recently it's now an official federal holiday. It's a paid federal holiday, I believe. So that's
Yeah. It's crazy.
So I want to, before we go into the meat and potatoes of our discussion, which is going to be around equality and racism and a lot of these heavy topics that are out there now, I just want to touch base on a couple of facts that are, for people that haven't done any research or haven't, really paid attention. 1865, the abolishment of slavery, right? 1865, just over 100 some years ago. 100 years after the abolishment of slavery, there was the abolishment of segregation in the U.S., right? So 1964, there was still segregation, and then, we've seen significant racial events happening. We'll call them events. 1992, Rodney King, and if you pay attention to any media whatsoever, there's been a significant number of other names in the media. Most recently, or not even most recently, because there's more now. It was George Floyd in Minneapolis, and in what a lot of people are saying it was the spark that started the fire for what many are calling the largest civil rights movement in recorded history. I'm curious your thoughts on just kind of everything, right? How it kicked off. It led to protests initially, massive turnouts. We were actually trying to connect, couldn't connect because so many people, the tower, like there was no signal. But, what's your thoughts on just the last 2 weeks, the progression of what's happened, how it went global, and kind of where we're at now?
Yeah, man, it's been crazy. It's definitely been a roller coaster of emotions for myself personally, especially for us that like are in Minneapolis, frequently live there. It was wild, right? Because on one hand, like I'm definitely an African American, a black dude, and it was sickening to watch that video. Just like it's been sickening to see so many other videos and hear so many other stories over the course of years. I think for me, kind of coming into an adult, the Trayvon Martin situation is what sparked it all for me. It made it real in my life. You know, I heard stories from family members and relatives, and I had any experiences with police and just like, you know, racial injustice systematically and otherwise throughout the course of my life. But that's when I really started to understand it, because me and Trayvon Martin were the same age. And that kind of like put me on a different trajectory. And I started thinking about things differently, leading all the way up to this point where I was just like, man, I'm tired, just like everybody else is tired. I think it sparked something internally in our city, but then obviously nation and worldwide, where it's just like people were starting to wake up and understand that like Black people, people of color aren't just crying wolf about this situation. Like it's really a problem that we've had to deal with forever. If you look at the origin or how the origins of policing, it was to police slaves, runaway slaves. Like that's what it's always been about. It's always been to control and keep Black people down. Obviously, it's reinvented itself over the years as things progress and change. You know, if you want to hold a certain level of power, you got to progress and change as well. But the same core values have kind of always stayed prominent, and that's kind of what I think was, like you said, it was a spark of the last straw on the camel's back, essentially. You know, George Floyd is just, unfortunately, another name on a long list of people that were unfairly handled or treated by the police and ended up losing their life because of it. So, yeah, but to switch to like the aftermath of everything, it was tough, man. It was definitely tough. I know I was talking to a lot of guys that I knew personally that we're all from the city, and it was like we understood it, what was happening, but at the same time, it was like, man, we grew up in these areas, like, you know, the Midtown Y, like that was the first like legit basketball team that I played for when I was like 8 years old. You know, I had played for little like parks and stuff before that, but like
Sure.
I spent so much time on that block going to that Target up and down Lake Street. I used to live on, you know, Portland and Franklin, you know, so a couple miles away from that block. So watching that all burn and watching the city just be in chaos was like, I don't know, like I couldn't sleep for that whole week. Like it was just checking CNN, making sure my family was good, like staying at my mom's house a lot, just because there was a lot of things contributed to that whole riot situation.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of were like, it was a bittersweet feeling, or not even bittersweet. It was just like a necessary evil almost. Like it was like, man, I understand it because we need to be heard because this can't keep happening. But at the same time, it was like, oh, the city, man, you know, like, you know what I mean? It's our city too. So.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the big conflicts I had of conflicts of interest, I guess, as I understood it. The anger. I mean, saw the video, and anybody that can't, like, regardless, you know, I saw that Candace Owens video where she's basically discrediting the whole thing and like how he's like this hero. It's like totally missing the point. You know, it doesn't matter if he's under the influence, has a record. It's the due process, and it's what took place. Did you happen to watch the Dave Chappelle special, the 846?
I did, yes.
What did you think?
Man, it was super powerful to me. I'm not really even a huge Dave Chappelle fan, or I wasn't, as far as like the Chappelle show and all that era. For me, it never really resonated, but like what he's done since he's come back, I've definitely been tuned in. And the last little project, I don't know what he calls it, that he dropped was like, I don't know, it was just really powerful for somebody to be a comedian, but still have like that level of, he's just a genius in my opinion. Like the way that he went about it, the topics that he touched on and the way that he touched on them, and to be able to do that in front of an audience was like crazy. Like I watched every second of it, and I was like, man, at first I had no idea what to expect. I'm like, how
Same.
joke out of this, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like he did throw in a couple of jokes here and there, but it was all like reality, and like at the end of the day, it was definitely more of a somber tone than usual. But I thought it was super powerful, and knowing his platform that he has, I think it probably resonated with a good amount of people that might not have thought in that way before, you know.
Sure. You know, one of the things that he had talked about, and the reason I brought it up was last night somebody shared an article with me that I'll include in the links below for any viewers, listeners, from NPR. It's a pretty middle of the road type of news outlet. And it was talking about racial covenants in Minnesota. And, back to Dave Chappelle, he had talked about, why people are like, why aren't you saying something? Why aren't you doing something? And he's like, I'm going to let the streets are doing all the talking, right? They're going to be loud enough, and you can see how loud they got. But to the streets are these racial covenants. There's this thing in Minnesota and I want to read something really quick, and it's just an excerpt. It's a couple sentences from what was literally included in these agreements for purchasing property. And this will lead into what we had talked about, the other day about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The most fundamental, most basic is physiological needs, food, water, shelter, warmth. This is housing, right? This is the fundamental need. And this shows how systemically, specifically in our own backyard, I'm not even looking nationwide. I'm just looking Minnesota. And this is in the early 1900s. And it went up to at least the 1940s. They had documented these covenants. So here, I'll just read it. And this is verbatim. It says, "It is further mutually covenanted that the premise hereby conveyed shall not at any time be conveyed, mortgaged, or leased to any person of Chinese, Japanese, Moorish, Turkish, Negro, Mongolian, or African blood or descent. Said restrictions and covenants shall run with the land, and any breach of any or either thereof shall work or forfeiture of title, which may be enforced by reentry." So it's saying if there's a breach of that, they'll take the property, like the property can be taken back. Mm-hmm. That's twisted, man. Like, I don't know how anybody could look at that and say that that's not systemically ingrained in a system, right?
Exactly.
And that ties directly into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of the basic fundamental, the very bottom rung, to an extent that if you don't even have that, you can't get to the point of security. Which security, I think everybody's also had an experience with COVID, like walking outside, you're like, I don't know, is something going to happen? And we talked about this, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. One, these covenants, it sounds like you're familiar with them, but two, the security aspect, having that second layer and, stripped away. Like, what's it been like for you in terms of just the day-to-day? We had talked about police a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just to go off of that last excerpt that you read, like, first of all, like that's a real problem in Minneapolis, nationwide, honestly. There's just so many systematic layers to keep people of color down, specifically Black people, like down in a certain equity space. And I always tell people, like, that's kind of the work that I'm doing right now. I'm looking to change how equity is viewed in under-resourced communities. Because if you look at equity, it's a class thing. It's not really a race thing. But when you have systematic laws put into place to keep certain races in a certain class, then equity becomes a race thing. And that's essentially what it is right there. We have so many, and that's not the only law. Those aren't the only laws that are put into place that run back for so long, but they all contribute to the detriment of people of color. Like, we have, like, before coronavirus, before the George Floyd murder, like, we had gentrification happening all over North Minneapolis. Like, that's where I'm from, and I was seeing it happening. And the reaction that I got from most people that I reached out to was, well, if you guys bought land in your own communities, if people bought land in those areas, then they couldn't gentrify it unless you sold it. It's like, we don't even get the opportunity to buy our own land. Like, the places that we're living, it's all renting. It's all, like, Black business owners, the interest rates on the loans that they get for their businesses are sky high. Like, they just don't even compare. Their denial rates are so much higher. I don't have the exact statistics on me right now, but than any other race or culture. So it's like, we're literally not even given the opportunity to show that we can thrive in a self-sufficient environment. And you go back to, you look at cities, there's some cities that are modeling that they can do it. Like Atlanta is a good example. There's a lot of Black ownership there. It's at the top. There's a few people that own a lot of things, but still, like, it's definitely possible. And I just think that there's so much work to be done. But yeah, I really, it's tough. It's really tough, but that is a big part of the issue that's going on. And that's what we kind of talked about Juneteenth earlier. It's like, Juneteenth is great, recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday. I'm not mad at it in any shape or form, but like at the same time, we got a lot realer issues or more prevalent issues that we need to deal with if we want to really institute some sort of change here, because giving me the day off today ain't really, that's not helping my situation. That's just giving me that's the same as 4th of July or any other holiday. Like, then we get right back to what we were doing. Like, we need to start changing these systems and these processes in order to really create some sort of equality and equity in our own communities.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. I want to touch base on something that you have been active. You're taking action in the community, and you had organized an essential needs give back, right? I'd be interested, like, share with the viewers, listeners, a bit about where did this come about and what's happening with it now? Because I know what happened in terms of the response, which is awesome. But just give us some insight into this.
Yeah, for sure. So I basically, when everything was happening, like you said, like, it was a roller coaster of emotions, and I was just looking to shift gears, right? I had been out at the protest. I had been in some of the riots, like, didn't even know. I just ended up being there, you know what I mean? Like, you just be outside.
It was happening everywhere, man. Yeah,
right? It was that second night or the first night of the real riots. It was like, if you were just outside, you looked over and buildings started burning. It was like, what?
Yeah.
So, and then kept protesting after that. I was not really getting a lot of sleep, and I was just looking for something to, like, do, you know what I mean? Like I said, I wasn't really
a positive outlet is what you were looking for.
I wasn't in 100% agreement with the rioting or whatever, and I realized that it wasn't even like us Minneapolis folks that was really doing that. So then I was like, okay, but we're being affected by it. How do we change the narrative? What are we gonna do to switch things up? I'd already been doing supply drops over south, just like for protesters and stuff, waters, snacks, whatever. And my mom called me and told me that the north side was hurting. Like, it was just as bad over there, but they weren't really getting the resources they need. So I just put it up on my story, social media, the power of that, just being like, yo, who wants to get involved? I'm just going to make a supply run over north, drop at a couple locations. If anybody wants to get involved, hit me up, Venmo me, we can get involved. I'm thinking it's going to be, 500. I was going to put like 200 up, somebody else throw 100. We get like $500 to $1,000, help a couple people out. And it just took off, honestly. Like, I can't say that it was me. I can't, had some other people get involved right away. Shout out to the homies Takina and Gino. And then from there, it just went crazy. We got a recap video coming soon, but, we were able to raise over $20,000 just in monetary donations. We were able to pass out at least over $85,000 worth of supplies. I really think it's well over 100. We just couldn't calculate everything.
Yeah.
Over the course of 4 days, we ended up having to come back another weekend. So it blew up, and that's why I was just kind of saying, like, I'm not an activist or anything. I just wanted to do something for the community. And, but at the same time, if you have an opportunity to have an impact, you got to kind of run with it. So we definitely pushed the envelope a little bit, but Essential Needs Give Back for the North Side, it went great. And we were able to, I got to get the official number, but it was over 1,500 families that came through and received supplies. So it was definitely, it changed the energy. It changed the mindset of myself, everybody that was involved. We took it from like, man, our country, our city is in such a bad place to like, in those couple of days, in those few moments, you felt so much joy and just so much like happiness and togetherness as one, like, you know what I mean? Whether people were coming to get supplies or people were dropping them off or they were volunteering, like everybody felt like we were in this together. We were doing this for our city. We were taking back the narrative. So it was good. But then unfortunately, after it was over with, it kind of settled back into being like, okay, well, the world's kind of still in the same place.
Now what?
How do we recreate that feeling permanently and more than just for a weekend, essentially? And that's what the goal is now.
So what's the next steps? I memean, you're out there, you're doing your thing. You've got your personal life stuff that you're working on. Fortunate enough to be able to work with you on something this weekend if the weather works out. Um, but in terms of your professional life and this community I don't know. You said you're not an activist, but you're out there. You're making things happen.
Well, through the connections that were made just for this drive, we're actually starting a nonprofit right now. In the process of filing that paperwork. We got a couple other events planned for the rest of the summer. So can't really get into that right now, but
Sure.
stay tuned. Like we'll definitely keep everybody posted. But yeah, like I don't know, it lit a fire under me, honestly. Like I said, I wasn't really expecting what happened to happen, but once it did, it was like, all right, cool. Like I know that this has always been a passion for me. I kind of always thought my music career was going to propel me to be in a position to give back on a certain level, but now I'm seeing that that's not really the case. So it's just about taking that action right now. And yeah, I'm excited. It's really been a passion of mine for my whole life. I'm the poster child of, someone who wasn't supposed to be successful or.
All right, so we're back. We had a little bit of problem with lag and glitchiness in the video. We're just restarting it. But Ty, you were talking a bit about how you've recently pivoted, where you're focusing your energy and your resources. You want to share a bit?
Yeah, so this donation drive really just lit a fire in me. I really saw how capable it was to have an impact in my community, like right now. And I really haven't been able to think about anything else since. I've been that kid in those lines me and my mom went through the food shelters. We've been in just homeless shelters before. She had me when she was 19 and kind of had to figure it out as she went. So that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know what happens when you give underprivileged people the right resources. They can definitely pull themselves up by their bootstraps, if you will. And that's not even always the point of it. Sometimes it's just like, we need to just restore balance in certain areas. So there's just so many different things, so many different needs and ways to attack these problems. And I'm just like ready to do my part and just, try to take it as far as I can take it.
Yeah, it's amazing how far empathy can take a movement. And just like you're saying, if people have the resources, I was talking with another guest recently about, putting a well in some regions, where there's a significantly, what's the word I'm looking for? Underserved population. If their daily routine requires them to spend a lot of energy just getting water or food, how much that takes away from their ability to start, doing other things. And if we just relate it back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, up the chain of, relationships and, fulfilling your best self, or becoming your best self, pursuing education, that if you're just trying to figure out housing and food and there's a security problem, it's amazing how much that can just keep you down. So it's awesome you're looking local. It's awesome you're taking action, to reach out if there's anything I can help with. And it's going to be interesting to see where you take everything here in the near future. Was there anything you wanted to touch base on before we cap this off?
Nah, man, I just, would hope everybody can use these current times as a learning experience, and just know that anything you heard from me or anybody that that may be a person of color, none of us speak for all of us. So it's more than just talking to one person or two people. Like, get involved, get in the communities, reach out to the people that you do know. And that's just the start, though, so I appreciate you, Micah, for having me on. And you already know what time it is with us. If you need anything in the future, I'm here. And we're just going to keep the movement going, man.
Respect, bro. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time. To all the viewers and listeners, again, all the information is down below. So find out any information that you'd like on how to get involved with. Are you going to have? Is there a link right now for the Essential Needs Give Back, or that's still pending some of the other stuff?
No, so that was just a one-time thing. It was actually just supposed to be a weekend. We got brought back, as I said, because of the demand. But that, as of right now, was just that's capped. So
the nonprofit is the next step, but that's pending.
Exactly. So
Gotcha.
That's on the works, and it'll be here soon.
Well, I'm gonna throw the link in below about one of the most recent projects we worked on. For those of you that have stuck around for the duration and actually go and watch it, my shot of the year is in that. You'll know when you see it. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun on that project. And yeah, thanks again, Ty.
For sure, man. Appreciate you.